Sarah was 36 when she noticed something she couldn't quite name. On paper, everything was fine. Stable income, no debt, retirement contributions on track, a savings account that was actually growing. 10 years earlier, this version of her life would have felt like enough. More than enough. But one Tuesday night, sitting at her kitchen table, staring at her banking app, she felt anxious. Not broke. Not struggling. Just uneasy. She refreshed the screen. Closed the app. I opened it again. And somewhere in that second refresh, a thought surfaced that she hadn't expected. Why do I still feel like this? Because the numbers weren't the problem. The feeling was, and the feeling felt old. Familiar in a way she recognized before she could explain it. It sounded like her mother's voice. Be careful. Don't get comfortable. You never know what could happen. Sarah grew up in a house where money moved quietly through conversations, where unexpected expenses didn't just cause stress, they caused a kind of low-level dread that would settle over the household for days, where even the good months felt temporary, like something that hadn't been fully earned yet, like something waiting to be taken back. And without ever deciding to, Sarah had absorbed all of it, not the specific circumstances, not the debt or the difficult years. Something quieter than that. A posture, a pattern, a low-grade financial alertness that had been running in the background of her adult life and never once turned itself off. Here's the thing though, most of us have one. You might earn more than your parents did. I live in a different city, navigate a completely different set of circumstances, and still find yourself responding to money the way someone else taught you to. With a map you didn't draw, that you didn't choose, that was handed to you so early. You never thought to question whether it still applied. And that inheritance, that quiet transfer of anxiety and belief and expectation, is one of the most overlooked reasons why so many people at so many income levels still don't feel wealthy. Because enough was defined for most of us long before we ever earned our first dollar. There's a pattern worth sitting with here. Across much of the developed world, people today have access to more than previous generations did at the same age. Higher real incomes, more financial tools, more ways in and out of economic difficulty. And yet the emotional experience of financial well-being keeps quietly retreating. 6 figures doesn't feel rich. Owning a home doesn't feel secure. A full savings account doesn't feel calming. So the question isn't really whether the money is there. The question is why it stopped feeling like something. Did wealth lose its power? Or did something shift inside the people trying to feel it? To answer that honestly, you have to go beneath the numbers, into conditioning, into comparison, into the invisible structures shaping how we measure our own lives without realizing we're measuring at all. Because wealth has never been purely mathematical. It's psychological, and psychology doesn't update on its own. There's a concept in behavioral science called relative comparison. The idea is simple. The implications are harder to sit with. Human beings don't assess financial well-being in absolute terms. We assess it relationally, socially. We don't wake up asking whether we're doing well compared to where we were 5 years ago. We ask, usually without realizing it, how we're doing compared to the people around us. For most of human history, that comparison group was small. Your street, your workplace, a few dozen people whose lives you could actually observe directly. That changed. The internet didn't just expand access to information, it expanded your social reference group from dozens of people to millions. And it did so in a way that is structurally distorted. Because what you see online isn't balance sheets. It's highlights, vacations, renovations, promotions framed as casual updates. Investment wins are mentioned like afterthoughts, new cars, new homes, new chapters that always seem to be beginning for someone else. You end up comparing your entire financial reality to someone else's most curated moments. And that comparison does something subtle. Something you don't notice until it's already happened. It shifts your baseline upward, quietly, constantly. And when your baseline shifts, your sense of wealth shrinks. Even when your income grows. Sarah felt this, though she wouldn't have described it that way at the time. She bought a modest home. It felt like a milestone, something real, something she'd worked toward for years. And then, gradually, without any single dramatic moment, the world around her seemed to move. Friends renovated kitchens. Someone bought a larger house. Someone else mentioned, almost in passing, that they'd just picked up an investment property. Nothing about Sarah's financial life had changed, but her internal reference point had, and without fully understanding why, what had once felt like an achievement started to feel like a starting point. That's the quiet trap. Progress doesn't always feel like progress anymore. It feels like catching up, because the bar is never still. And the bar doesn't only move through comparison. It moves through something even more personal. Researchers call it hedonic adaptation, the brain's tendency to normalize improvements almost immediately after they arrive. The extraordinary becomes ordinary faster than we expect. Faster than feels fair, honestly. The raise feels significant. For a few months, the new apartment feels spacious, until it just feels like home. The thing you worked toward for years becomes, within a season, simply the new baseline. And so a kind of treadmill emerges. You earn more. You adjust upward. You upgrade slightly. And the margin, the actual breathing room between income and obligation, doesn't expand the way the numbers suggest it should. Margin is what creates the feeling of wealth, not income. Margin. The quiet space where an unexpected expense doesn't become a crisis. Where you can make a financial decision from steadiness rather than pressure. When that space is thin, you feel fragile. Even when the salary looks more than sufficient on paper. There's something else worth naming. Modern financial life is less predictable than it used to be. Not necessarily worse, in every way, but less stable in ways that matter to the nervous system. Jobs feel less permanent. Industries shift faster than careers can keep pace. Housing costs move in ways that feel disconnected from logic. And your phone delivers. Economic uncertainty continuously. In a format designed to hold attention, not create clarity. There's research suggesting that people who check financial news daily report higher anxiety regardless of whether markets are actually moving up or down. The update itself becomes the stressor. And here's why that matters. The feeling of wealth requires a baseline sense of predictability, not certainty. Just enough steadiness that your body can stop bracing. When the future feels genuinely uncertain, the brain stays ready, ready for impact. And that readiness feels like scarcity, even when the account balance says something different. Now place childhood conditioning underneath all of this. If you grew up in a home where money was handled with quiet urgency, like something fragile, like something that needed to be protected before it disappeared, your nervous system formed conclusions early. That security is temporary. That comfort, held too loosely, becomes something you lose. That the good times are real, but they're not permanent, and only someone naive would forget that. And when you finally reach a point of genuine financial stability, you don't always feel stable. You feel watchful, careful, like someone who knows better than to relax. Like Sarah, at her kitchen table, refreshing the app, not because she was in danger, but because her nervous system never received the update that the danger had passed. This is the part most financial conversations never reach. You are not only responding to your current income, you are responding to every financial memory that came before it. And memories don't revise themselves. They wait. They persist in the background until something brings them forward into the light, which means you can out-earn your past by a significant margin and still feel quietly controlled by it. That's the real reason nobody feels rich anymore. The income changed. The emotional programming didn't. At some point, Sarah made a quiet shift. Not a dramatic one. Not the kind that makes for a clean before and after story. Just a shift in what she was actually trying to do. She realized she wasn't trying to be wealthy. She was trying to feel safe. And those aren't the same thing. Wealth, as culture defines it, is outward. It's visible. It's accumulation that signals something to the people around you. Safety is different. It's internal. It's quiet. It's the feeling of having enough room that life's unpredictability doesn't land like a threat. And that feeling doesn't always require more income. More often, it requires something harder. Stabilizing what you expect from yourself. The world has a structural interest in raising your definition of enough. Advertising depends on the gap between what you have and what you're told you should want next. Social media accelerates it. Entire industries exist inside that gap. And if your definition of enough keeps expanding, your sense of wealth keeps retreating. No number closes that gap permanently, because the gap isn't financial. It's psychological. There are a few things that actually seem to shift this, not dramatically, but genuinely. The first is simply noticing your comparison triggers, not in a rigid or disciplined way, just awareness. Noticing when scrolling changes your mood. Noticing when something feels necessary versus symbolic. That awareness alone begins to interrupt a loop. You can't choose differently from something you haven't first seen clearly. The second is separating income from identity. When your sense of yourself rises and falls with your earnings, stability becomes structurally impossible, because markets move, careers shift, industries evolve. But when security is defined internally, by resilience, by preparation, by honest expectation, it becomes something more durable, something that doesn't depend on the next number. The third is protecting margin, more deliberately than status. Margin is what makes money feel like a tool instead of a pressure. It's what turns an unexpected expense from a crisis into an inconvenience. It's what allows a quiet evening without the urge to check the app. For Sarah, it looked simple from the outside. She stopped upgrading every time her income increased. She let her lifestyle rise, just slower than her earnings. Not dramatically, just deliberately. And something shifted that she hadn't expected. She stopped opening the app at night. Not because she had more, because she finally felt steady. Maybe that's the real recalibration. Not chasing the feeling of being rich, building the feeling of being secure, because being rich is comparative. It moves with culture. It moves with whoever is around you at the time. Secure is personal. It moves with you. So maybe the more honest question isn't, why don't I feel rich? Maybe it's, who taught me what being rich was supposed to feel like? And is that definition actually yours? Or did you just inherit it? If something in this sat with you, I'd genuinely like to know. What's one money belief you think you absorbed somewhere along the way? Not something you reasoned into, something that just lives in you. Leave it in the comments. I do read them. And if you want to keep exploring how we actually relate to money, not the strategies, not the formulas, just the deeper and quieter patterns underneath, that's what this channel is for. Subscribe to Habitwealth Stories. Because sometimes the most significant shift isn't earning more. It's finally understanding the pattern you've been living inside, without ever knowing it was there.